Hey there. In today's video, I am going to just do a quick flip through of this old vintage book that I have turned into an art journal, just showing the abstracts that I was exploring during that time, the color palettes. I do not have a start date, so I'm not sure when I actually started this. I do have an end date, which was a few days ago. So, and I'll make a note of that in this book. It's about a 5x8, which is smaller than I normally work, but I have really enjoyed this little book. I love starting on not on a white page. I like the text underneath. Sometimes it shows through, sometimes it doesn't. It's just been a fun little book to work in. So I usually have 2 or 3 different things going, like a couple vintage books in different sizes, and then a couple art journals in different sizes. So depending on where I'm at, or sometimes I like to create in all of them kind of at the same time. Like, okay, I'm exploring these certain colors, and so I'll pull them all out and do it in all the different sizes and on the different textures that the paper provides. So just a great idea, and a no there's no risk involved. So like, you buy an art journal and sometimes they're very expensive, and so it's really hard to get started because it's like, yikes, I don't want to mess it up, or I don't want to do anything wrong. Whereas an old book, you get, I mean, I don't know, I would not pay more than $1, but you there's no risk. It doesn't matter, what happens. So I would highly suggest, if you haven't tried this before, and honestly, I could do a quick video on how I get started and what I do to kind of prep my book before I get started actually painting in it. So let me know in the comments below if you're interested in that. So otherwise, let's get started. I'm going to show you a quick flip through. All right, let's get started. I'm going to show you the interior of this book that is finished, this vintage book that I've turned into a art journal. So I opted to leave the front page blank. I kind of went back and forth, but the person, the owner of the book, had written their name and the date, and I just like that. So I just decided to leave this blank and have that. Now, I do wish that I had put the date that I started making art in here. So typically I will date the beginning, the actual day I started creating, and then I will I will put the last day that I made a mark in my art journal. So most all of my art journals have the beginning and end date. This does not have one. So I don't know if it's been a year or 2 years or how many years, but anyway. Okay, so to begin with, these were little pieces that I glued in. I a lot of times will create on to make cards and things like that, and these were just pieces from that. So I just glued those in. And then sometimes I'll write quotes or different things that really strike me. And in this case, that's what I did here. I did a lot of exploring on this kind of whoop-de swirly movement. So the book is kind of an exploration of abstract shape. And this you'll see a lot in this book. So in different colors, and then different how different colors work together. And then obviously sometimes I took words that were actually in the book or titles. This is another piece that I glued in that was going to be a little card. So, and then I write little notes to myself. I don't do a lot of writing in my art journals in general, but sometimes if something really is striking me, I will include it. Okay, so here was an example of, circles, which I really like. And 4 circles I would not normally do. I like odd numbers better. But I have this fabric, and I don't know if you can see it running through, and I really like the textural piece to that one. Here's some more swoops, just in different colors. I really do like a muted palette, so you'll see that throughout. Another round of swoops. Here I was swatching out some soft pastels, which I like doing. This was in charcoals, it looks like. And so I did, back-to-back charcoals. I'm actually very much into portraits. So I do a lot of faces, not necessarily in this book, but in general when I'm painting or creating. And so this book though is more focused on the abstract, but you'll see a few faces in here. So again, another kind of muted palette. I did some writing, some different things. So different mark making. I don't know if you can see this. I have there's a kind of a ladder that goes up. That's kind of a theme in a lot of my work. I put a ladder, just certain marks I go to over and over again, like the tick marks and the little T's sometimes I make. So here's a color palette that I'm actually really drawn to, and lots of mark making. just like the tones, and I like the black peeking through, a little bit of contrast, but then very, it's very calm and subtle. Another portrait, I think I did that in the Derivan liquid pencil, and then I swatched out the colors that I used in the portrait. Another one, I really like this color palette as well. Very simple design, but I like the composition of that. Here's another portrait. Looks like she's probably done in charcoal too. Might have been a quick sketch with some color swatching. Here's some more shapes, abstract. Another round of abstract shapes. Circles are something I'm really drawn to. I actually sometimes will, I think I put in, this was like an index card with some numbers on it, like from the old card boxes that you might, card boxes that you would use. And so then I just was gluing some things in, and I actually really like this, and I wish I had done a few more of them because it kind of adds some sturdiness to the pages. I will say, you can see where I've torn out pages. So when you're making this type of a book, you do have to take out some of the pages to allow, if you're going to add a lot of texture and collage, which is something that I typically do, then you have to take out some of the pages to allow for that, so that there's plenty of room for it to grow. But in a case like this, a lot of times what I've done is collaged over the top to add some sturdiness. The pages in this book are rather fragile, and I will say most typically I glue at least 2 pages together, but in some cases I can tell that I didn't, and the pages are rather fragile. Here's another one that I like. I like all the different marks. I like that there's a lot of different colors underneath. There's 2 pieces of collaged material down just to add a lot of texture. This one I believe I did in like ink. So I had some backgrounds down, and a lot of times I let the words show up, but here's that swirly mark again. Lots of swirls. Here's just another kind of more muted palette. Even though there's some black in there, it has, just kind of a muted feel to it. And again, just those same colors coming up. Now you can see here, there's a piece missing out of that. It's because the book is old and it's very fragile. And although there is 2 pieces glued together, like sometimes that just happens. So some more random marks. Here's like a botanical and a flower. Obviously, I'm just speaking to what you already see here. I believe I used oil pastels on this. And then kind of painted around it, just kind of exploring different techniques. Here's a couple more, portraits. And I don't typically like to do portraits quite this small. And if I do, I like to leave them a little bit rougher, use a very limited palette like I did in this case. And then I like to create in a bigger format. This book is about as small as probably I would create in. Here is some more marks. There's that swoop again. And I will say what I did so the pages don't stick together is I've used clear gesso. Now, when you use a watercolor like this, which is very rare for me to use watercolor, you don't have to worry about the pages sticking together. It's only when you use the acrylic paint, because it has that, the binder in it, that, that when you put the pages together, it will then like pull apart, or you might rip part of it. So what I've been doing is putting a layer of clear gesso over it if the pages tend to be sticking. So, and this is a little bit darker one. I had found this little word, my dreams, and not that I am dreaming dark colors, but it just kind of had this this vibe to it with the red and the black and the pop of yellow. So this was, I took modeling paste over the top and then just scratched in with this kind of botanical feel, or vine. And then again, the swirl, like I said, I was really into that. This is just kind of practicing with ink, I believe, just different shapes of leaves and botanical items. Another one that has, circles and squares, and just really trying to explore abstracts and where I'm going with those. So another portrait. This one is in, I might have to spray this if I haven't sprayed it already. It looks like it's smearing, but this is in charcoal, which is, I love charcoal, though it's really messy and you do need to spray it. Otherwise it will just smear all over, which it looks like it's kind of doing. This is another watercolor, which, like I said before, it's something that I'm not typically drawn to watercolor, but I like, sometimes you can get some very unique effects. And probably because I don't really know how to use watercolor, it's why I'm not drawn to it, because it seems really complicated and, light to dark, and you have to build up your colors in a different way. Whereas with acrylic paint, I don't like it, I just paint right over the top of it, which you can't really do with watercolors. And there's another swirl. You don't see a lot of pink in my work, but this looks like it was with a like an oil pastel, just to kind of add a different color. And I like that pop of color. So even though I typically am not drawn to using pink in my work, I'm usually doing these kind of more muted, what I would consider the ugly colors, and that's typically my color palette. You can hear that where that was kind of pulling apart. This probably doesn't have any clear gesso on it, and so it's pulling apart from that. But another round of those swirling marks. And this was just